Ooh, there's a nice verbal there.
Yeah.
So just kind of having a more in-depth discussion today about this concept of, are you a personal trainer and are you a life coach, and kind of what comes with those titles and responsibilities. So we have Zeynep here, who is a physiotherapist, who would not put herself in the life coach category, and she'll give her reasons why. And then we have Sam here that, I mean, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say that if there was like a delineating line between trainer and life coach, would you say that you are more like a toe, at least more in the life coaching realm?
Yes, I would.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. So
that's
maybe
accurate.
let's start there. Let's talk about like your evolution, um, even as like a public presence of, changing your monikers, this and that, kind of how you've come to this point. How have you found yourself here as more of a life person instead of a like system person?
Yeah. Um, I guess I'll try to be as brief as possible, thinking about like what's useful to go back towards. I started with body work, particularly, so totally passive is one way to look at that. Like Thai body work in particular. One of the taglines is like having yoga done to you. So like you move their limbs around and they're stretching and stuff. Um, and then after a while, I just said like, well, I feel like people need more than just having stuff done to them. They should have some agency. And so I started investigating movement. And that's how I became an FRC fanatic for a while, and our functional range conditioning fanatic for a while, and moved into more movement-based training. And then I would just have people walk in the door I would offer both services, the passive and the active. And then when I lived in Philadelphia, and my intuition was telling me that almost every time somebody walked in with the intention of getting one, their bodies were telling me the other. So I guess I became a little more directive in that, of like, you said you want to work out, but I think you need to lie down for an hour. And like you said, you need to like, you want to not relax, but like your body's crying out for movement. Like, let's talk about this. And then I guess I just have always really enjoyed talking to people. I feel a little bit of like of anxiety and like self-worth kind of like questions still even come up in me now about like the coaching aspect of things. Like, to me, I just find people really interesting. And if I pick up on something that is bothering someone, where that's by like a tone of voice or something in the way they're talking about it, or something that seems kind of evasive about what we're talking about, I want to dig into that with them, or like open up the space to. I think I've gotten better in my most recent transitions. I've gotten better about like not needing them to open up to me, but like putting the pieces in place for them too if they want to. And I guess the last thing I say is like, just from what I've seen and witnessed, and like seen other people teach and stuff, it just like so often like biopsychosocial spiritual model makes the most sense to me, because I just feel like we're so complicated, and it's amazing how many different things can be influencing a person at one given time. So if somebody comes to me and I think their stuff is truly physical now, I would actually rather send them to a physio or to a personal trainer, because it just doesn't interest me as much. So I don't think I'm the best for them.
Okay, I think you hit on something really important there, like your interest as a person, what you're interested in other people. Like, again, you're like, the movement is like, I've been there, done that. Like, I want the other stuff, which is very, very cool.
Cool.
So, and the question for you, Zeynep, and would you even since you're a physiotherapist, would you even call yourself a trainer?
No.
Okay. Because that was what I was curious, is like being in the medical world, right? Like when you kind of cross that line, there's almost a status that comes with that. Like, I had to go through a lot to become this. And like, I don't hear of many, for example, I don't look, but I don't hear of many doctors being like, no, I'm going to go the life coach realm. They're like, no, 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 the doctor realm, the medical stuff, the physical stuff, that's kind of where I want to be. So, as a physiotherapist, as someone who works on the bodies and understands that there's more going through it, especially with your new like psychotherapy training that you're doing, because you recognize that actually talk about that a little bit. Talk about your interest in psychotherapy, because it's kind of similar to Sam's.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that I'm actually at quite the same point with Sam on this one. Like, so I've been a physiotherapist for 12 years, and I only call myself physiotherapist because I happen to, like study physiotherapy, and that's all. Other than that, I don't think, I mean, at least in Turkey, it doesn't give you a status at all. We don't have much rights in Turkey as physios. So, and I would say that I had a course of like working with as a physio, really different than other physios in Turkey and throughout the world, I suppose. Yes, I also started with the passive things because that's the system in here. And as in passive, it's not the manual work, but it's more like the electrotherapy work, like all the electrical stuff and the ultrasound. That's the, system that works in here. And then I started to question, like in my case, people bring specific issues, like they bring a specific problem, and it's usually the pain, and some other symptoms goes along with it. So you have this duty of to like fix or like get rid of the pain kind of point of view. So I started from, okay, I was in the hospital and I was like, okay, we are doing things to these people, but they don't work. No one gets better. I mean, that can't be it, And then I started to, question and then look up for some stuff. And then I moved towards to the, like more active treatments in terms of the musculoskeletal pain, more like movement habits, what goes wrong, why it goes wrong. The most important question would be because, and then the frame gets bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of what is causing this problem. So again, as Samantha said, that it's like there are millions of things that affects a person's situation. So now I don't know, maybe it's because I see more chronic pain people. It seems like that it is related to psychosomatic stuff, like most of the time, if not all the time. So I had to move towards to the psychotherapy area, and now I've been training for 2 years, and I kind of see people both for physiotherapy and psychotherapy. And if it's so where I stand is that, again, they still come to me with a problem, with a complaint. And then what I'm trying to do is that what is the main problem that is causing these symptoms? Is it physical, or is it psychological, or is it maybe, like somewhere in between? And then I am trying to guide them towards to this, the correct way to help themselves, because like I don't do anything. I am just trying to help them to understand what's going on. And then the choices are still theirs to make.
Got it. Okay. So I'm curious. It almost sounds again like I think of your room, Sam, that had the two halves. it was like the more like rest mental side and then the more physical side. And it seems that Zeynep, you've taken that exact same path, except there's a slight difference in that I think, Zeynep, you wanted to be better at taking away the pain. So you like went and you actively sought out training in that mental. So now you've got these two things. Sam, did you get any training that helped you shift, or did you just lean more into your intuition?
Thinking about like the training that I got from, like, speaking of spiritual entities, happened in like a hot tub in Hawaii, like, like powered by like fire and like, you know, there's great stars and moons and stuff. And I just like, to me, a lot of training is experience to me, even including like when I took FRC, like the main, like I got a lot of stuff from that, a lot of tools. My dog is grumbling.
Yeah.
Here, so, if there's like a grumbling, hi Meg. Hi, we're chilling. Like when I started FRC was like, oh, now I know what it feels like to feel a low grade isometric in my body, and that's an experience that I didn't have before. And so a lot of my stuff has been experiential, and so I've really valued just getting work done by other people and with other people, and experiencing that, and kind of, I think I'm very good at embodying it and then being able to interpret similar things in other people's bodies. Trying to think, I mean, I guess not, because it should be more obvious, or, you know, definitely forget some big things sometimes. A lot of reading books, and taking some courses, but nothing that was as intensive or specific for such a long period of time as Zeynep's talking about the 2 years and stuff. There's a part of me personally that's sort of always, I don't know, like I'm possibly overly cautious about being in boxes, of like, oh, I don't want to take that thing that's going to like put me into this thing, and perhaps in my personality maybe make it a little bit more difficult to like break out of that box. I've just often, like, I'll start reading a book and like a third of the way through I'm like, okay, I get it, I get the information that like they're going to keep going on for 200 pages about here, and I'm sure it's great, but like kind of get the point. So yeah, definitely much less formal training, and I would love personally to have like more mentorship kind of stuff. I just haven't met a lot of people that it's been feasible to do long-term mentorship, whatever, for like money from my part, or where they live, or that type of thing. And that's also an excuse, because I could go move, like, you know, like could move somewhere and go figure that stuff out too. But
Right.
yeah.
Huh. I want to be careful how I phrase this.
Sure.
Do you feel, how did you learn to trust your intuition that it was what this person needs? Was it literally just experience of like kind of being right, and then you just gain confidence on that? How did that work?
Yeah, I have some pretty direct stories about that, because it was initially was like an intentional shift over, because the way I learned Thai body work practice was initially like a bunch of different choreographed things of like, you do this, and then I kept learning more choreography, like, oh, they have these symptoms, you do this one, you know, in the lineage that I was in. So I had all these things memorized and very rhythmic and stuff, and I just eventually started working on one leg in the choreography, but I'd be staring at the other leg and not really sure why. And I was like, eventually I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna dive in. And I don't remember which client it was on or anything. I just do remember that once I started doing that, everybody started falling asleep very deeply and very immediately. And so that was my like carrot to keep me going in that direction of like whatever was happening to their nervous system was just like profoundly relaxing. And then, yeah, and then like more stuff happened from them. Then it was a lot of just personal questions. Like another direct one was, I started just wondering like why I choose to go left or right around an obstacle in front of me on the sidewalk. And I started taking walks where I just intentionally focused on whatever sensations happened to direct me one way or another. And so I've taken many, many hours of random walks and drives that I called universe walks. It's like the hippiest thing that I did at the time. So it was trying to cultivate that intuition in general in life. And then from there, just continuing on with lots and lots of books about the way other people have forged their paths.
Interesting. Zeynep, if I come back to you, was there, because you obviously came to this road where you're like, this stuff isn't working, this shock, this electric, you know, and you're like, there has to be another way. And so, you know, you looked, was there, would you say it was intuition or curiosity that said, I need to look more at this mental stuff? Or maybe both. Maybe you lump them together.
Both, but curiosity must have came first, I guess. And then a lots of trial and error. Like Samantha, I never, you know, done any through like intense courses until this psychotherapy training. It was all just, you know, like workshops and small things and self-experiencing, and then, you know, like thinking about it, you know, like what's going on here. And through patient experiences, like I would have to say that I've done lots of mistakes over the years, and then you get to a point that you start to recognize certain situations, like when the patient comes to see you, and then when they start to talk about their problems, some problems that are like I've seen so many times that I can understand what it is just by listening to the patient, not even doing anything, you know, like if where the pain comes from is, it's so clear to me because the story is so familiar, you know, and that's of course experience. Because interesting enough that certain things related to humankind present themselves like the same, almost like mathematics, you know, there is a math. Yeah, there's a math behind human stuff, I'm gonna have to say, and it doesn't change. It doesn't change. So when you start to, you know, like learn that math, you know, like it's like sitting down and solve a lot of math problems, and then you get quicker and quicker and quicker, you know, like catching them and see the solution.
Right, like again, the pattern recognition.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious, what made you decide to take, is it a licensure course that you took? What made you decide to take the deeper dive?
No, it's actually, I didn't decide anything. You know, the interesting thing is that I like throughout my, I mean, I didn't even want to be a career person. You know, my dream was to be a housewife.
Things take a turn.
yeah, I'm super serious. I was just working because I have to, but you know, this curiosity about, you know, like why is this like this, got me to this point. And the psychotherapy thing is that it wasn't even my idea. So I've been in therapy for 16 years, and the center that I am going, there is a supervisor, a mentor, I would say. And when he, of course, he is familiar with my, you know, like life course. So when I started to, you know, like work with the more chronically ill people, he suggested that, you know what, you should come here and, you know, like attend these trainings with us, and that'll help you to understand people's problems better. And I mean, he kind of suggested that, you know, like you have I mean, whatever it is that you need to, like be able to understand people. So you can do this job. So come here and get trained and, do this. That was like that. And then I started to attend the trainings, and it's not an official training, like it's a pretty interesting place that they're like, I mean, I'm calling myself physiotherapist just because I have to call myself something, like it's not about like I'm against life coaches or trainers or anything. Like it's like I have to call myself something, and because I graduated from physiotherapy, so I'm a physiotherapist, and that's it. I don't give too much value to titles. And I wish we had the chance to call ourselves nothing, I'm just Zeynep, working with people.
You can't market that though, Zeynep. No one will know when to find you.
Yeah, because like at the end, it doesn't define anything about you to call you something. And that's actually something that comes to me from that, training, because in there, we never talk about like diagnosis, like, the professional jargon that is used to define kind of like DSM type of thing. And even our tutor is totally against it, because I mean it doesn't help at the end, okay, you have ADHD, so what? I mean, what's the solution? So there is no point in tagging or giving name to things. Like if you don't understand it and if you can't offer a solution, there's no point. So that's kind of my point of view. I am trying to understand what is going on here, and try to, and when you understand what it is, the solution, I mean, it just comes up. So I don't care naming names. So
you just wanted to understand more under a bigger, it wasn't even about finding a protocol, right? Yeah. It was like, I want to know more. I want to be able to dig deeper in two buckets. Sam, did you want to jump in?
Well, I was more just like raising the roof, like approving of what you were saying, like, oh yeah, I love that. But I did have something to mention, if I may. I think a lot of you made me think about, like, a lot of my path has also been just like trying to essentially put myself in a position where I believe anything, which sounds like trying to make myself gullible, but like where I don't like the siloing of stuff, even though I think there's some brilliant people that have intentionally put themselves into silos because they want to know everything about this. And it is very distracting to start considering everything on the table, right? You're like, all right, some people, it's really good that they just learn about like the physical things of cells, the stuff. But like, I don't know, I try to, like, if I see somebody I like you, Chris, like mentioned somebody like bar running or whatever on Instagram, just like, I trust this person enough, I'm just going to blindly follow anybody that they recommend. Or like, if something just pops up randomly that seems interesting, I'll just be like, sure. And then I'm like, okay, I could see how that exists. And that's a thing that I'm now aware of exists in my psyche. And I can just kind of process it that way, so that if it ever comes up with somebody, I can be like, man, like the weirdest thing I've read about recently is urine therapy and looping, where people like drink their own urine. And apparently that's a whole thing. And some people swear by it. And it's like horrifying initially. And then it's like, well, let me question that reaction and like all this stuff. Like, but then people are like, I'm like, is this all a joke? Are they all in on it? Like, it's like, but then people are like, no, I've absolutely cured my cancer. And you're like, okay. So trying not to completely dismiss both anybody's experience or the possibility that something could be helpful for somebody, which is way too much. And also I think can be helpful from that psychotherapy lens of like not judging what somebody is saying towards you and trusting their experience. Now, like there's a voice ringing in my head from like, Dr. Michael Chivers about like, or Dre from FRC, where they're like, well, it's very different and it's very specific to get a diagnosis for, an itis versus, a different type of thing going on in somebody's ankle, and the diagnosis is super important. And it's just never felt that interesting to me. And I'm what I thought I was hearing from Zeynep about, like, say ADHD is like, cool, you have a label, but like that doesn't change whether or not like what's happening actually fits well into your life, could be a benefit to your life in some way. Like, what aspects of it feel like maybe we could work on to kind of adjust the levers a little bit, but like just to make it work for you. Or the way kids get labeled with ADHD because they don't want to sit for 6 hours straight, you know, or this kind of stuff. I'd be curious about what either of you think about, like, the when if ever are diagnoses very important, or are they only important for people that choose to exist in a silo and are looking for a protocol, like, of like, you said this, so now I press these buttons.
Right. Well, I think, like, I'll take it back. I'll take it back to PE, right? So I probably get between 250 and 300 kids a semester, right, that I see every day. And part of state protocol is to give you a binder. It's a red binder. It's called an IEP book. And it's every kid and everything that's wrong with them. And I decided to, like, literally, like, this person has a disability, right? So I've decided a long time ago, I'm not looking in that book. And I will tell you that they're all functioning and capable in the world of PE. Now, I may get surprised when I give them something written and I see them just staring at the piece of paper. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know if they can like read and write very well. So then I just sit with them and be oral. But again, nobody comes in with a label. Nobody has a name tag on. I just treat them as human beings. And the outcome has been a million times better than, oh, you have this condition, I can't do this, or you can't do this. It's like, no, like, let's see what happens. And so when I think about that diagnosis, it definitely works, because I think everyone's trying to do their best, right? Everyone's trying to figure out with a diagnosis, like, this is going to help them. And we all know that there are people that are like, this goes to the responsibility piece, like, who will shrug off behaviors to a diagnosis, right? Like, I just can't do this, or I can be an asshole because I've been given this golden ticket from this diagnosis, like, to do so.
And there's so many people that say that they never got help until they got a proper diagnosis, right?
Right. So again, it works for and against them. Zeynep, did you want to jump in on that at all?
Can't think of anything right now.
And I guess maybe a question to you is, you said you're seeing psychotherapy patients, like, through this program. So I guess my question is, are they the same people simply coming in and saying, I'm hurting, or I have a problem? Maybe they have or have not identified what that problem is. Or are you coming in with people who have been labeled and said, I have this condition and nobody is able to help me? Like, what kind of world are you residing in at the moment?
In psychotherapy, they just come with, like, just not labels or anything, but just some problems that they're having in their lives. They're upset, or they're depressed or confused. These are the problems that they're having. But in interesting thing with psychotherapy is that no one actually knows why they came in when they first came in. It's more like a vague problem that it's like, I feel like there is a problem, like, but I can't just, like, name it specifically. It's more like a restlessness, I would say. And in generally, like, the problem is that because I'm including myself into this too, that we are not raised to be adults, because our parents are not adults. So we are suffering from like, still trying to live an adult life as a teenager, or as a kid, or as a baby. So that's the main problem that's causing this restlessness. That's the psychotherapy world. But in physiotherapy, yeah, because I'm not, like known. People came to see me with problems like they have for 5, 10, 15 years, and they've been seeing a lot of doctors, other physios, like they tried lots of stuff. So they came to me with many labels, and
None of them fitting.
yeah, and no, and then the conversation usually starts like this, like, what is your complaint? And they go, oh, I have a hernia, L5S1, and I'm like, yeah, okay, but what is your complaint? That's not exactly.
Right. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And
So that's about it.
I wonder too, and I don't know, Sam, have you done any psychotherapy, therapy in a mental realm at all?
I went to I guess a coach a couple of years ago, but there was some technicality as so like she worked in a psychologist's office, but I don't know, like they tried to explain to me what the difference between coach and therapist was, and I'm forgetting the quick synopsis off the top of my head, but it was functioning similarly, I believe. But yeah, I did that because I realized that I had a bias against it, and I thought it was weird, and people that did it were weird. So I was like, oh no, I have to do it and like see what that's like. I cried.
What was so what was your other than like, oh, okay, this has value, which I'm assuming, and going through it, did you come away like, this is more than I thought it was? This, like, I need to integrate this in some way?
I think I just my feeling about it now is just another one of these things where I think it exists and I'm sure it helps people. So my bias is removed from thinking it wasn't good for people. But speaking to some things Zeynep said right in the beginning, like it's like it almost doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter like the type of thing, because there's so much this isn't exactly what you said, Zeynep, but what I heard was like how there's so much variability between practitioners of exactly the same thing, that like, cool, like great, therapy can be helpful, but like what therapy? And so that's a common, which therapist, all this type of thing. And some people say it's amazing, and some people like go to the first person and like never get help, but they're like, I guess this is therapy. And I'm just gonna keep going, and I'm gonna tell everybody it's great, even though I'm seeing no improvement in my life. And like there's all these complicated things. So that's why like intuition interested me the most as a foundational piece, because like how do you decide whether or not somebody's right for you or not? Like hopefully by trusting yourself to make the decision. And yeah, that one of my monikers at one point was the decision making coach, which was like, whatever, I don't think it got me any like clients for that, but I was like trying to describe what I care about, like you said, and I'm like, I need to have a label. So what is the thing? And I was like, I just want you to be able to say yes or no more concretely, and like feel good about it and not regret it later. But these things, but
yeah. So maybe let's kind of really look, because again, it's like doing the same stuff. We're all three of us are doing like, what does this person need? Like in front of me, right? Whatever kind of you call yourself. But if I were to just kind of break it down, and we'll look at it as in what you actually do. So Sam, why does someone reach out to you?
Working on that every day, man. I had a very pleasant experience actually just this past Sunday, because recently I've taken new vigor in trying to like describe sessions with me on my Instagram, and somebody commented and was like about sessions, and we got in touch, and he drove 2 hours to come see me, and like understood that it would be weird, and like having no expectations was probably the best thing, because I was just going to read his body, and we almost didn't say anything. And then he like laid down, and I told him to lie down, and then I just did stuff. And then he gave me money, and I told him to come back in 2 weeks because it felt like we weren't done yet. so like why somebody, that's consistently been an issue for me with marketing, is trying to figure out what problems I speak to. So, I've done workshops on more specific things, which has been helpful, about like getting what you want, was a pretty successful one. And one's about like, like listening and communication and journaling and stuff along those lines. So I guess I hope that people come to me for some facilitated introspection, and like a mirror towards, whatever lens are presenting themselves through it. And my current moniker is Shamanic Sam, because I haven't come up with a better thing to describe like something that incorporates, or at least is open to, spirituality and like visualizations and stuff, and like potentially singing at them. Be like, all right.
So when you would I be correct in that they are looking for someone to listen and or read them?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it seems like
And
part
hopefully
of,
empower them to do some stuff too, because I would like them to have a vested part in whatever their homework is or something like that, but I can't control that to only some degree.
okay. And when you put on seminars and such, are you basically trying to disseminate the skill of listening, the skill of communication? And are those mostly for people who work with other people? Are they mostly for coaches or whatever they want to call themselves?
I've never targeted that specifically. It's just like whoever, hopefully, I guess whoever it speaks to. That I guess my image in my head is that somebody comes across a thing and goes, I don't know why, but I want to sign up for this. Like that's my ideal,
Mhm.
my ideal client, and especially if it's somebody that doesn't usually do that. Like just that first intuitive leap is,
I was going to say it's intuition matching intuition,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe this thing I can't verbalize, but I am compelled in whatever way to message, to reach out. And again, people weirdly, maybe they can't communicate it, but they can relate. They can relate to interest. So that just kind of tends to happen. So this session that you described wasn't a lot of actual conversation, but it was literally just more being in the presence and trusting. Like
Mhm.
I drove 2 hours to trust you. Like I think about
Yeah.
it, like to trust you and to see what happens when I do that. Right. And I
Yeah.
guess in another week you'll get the aftermath. Zeynep, are you more actual verbal communication? Is that when, so someone's gonna, so let's back up. Why do people come to you?
Well, mainly with musculoskeletal and musculoskeletal problems, and also with pelvic related problems, because that's happened to be the patients that I've seen the most, and that kind of like the word, like spread out. Again, not my choice, not under my control. Yeah.
So let's take that. So I'm assuming most of they're like, hey, this lady can fix me. She fixed this other person. That's what they kind of come in with. So have this issue. Is it, because I remember our session that we put up, is it mostly just conversation? Is it conversation with words, conversation with like, do this movement, let me watch you? What is that?
Yeah, first of all, of course, it's conversation, because like the history taking, like the simple qualities of the issue, like when it started, like how does it elevate, or like what helps, like when do you feel it, etc. Answer to these simple questions are so crucial, because it gives me like 80-90% of the idea that like what might be going on there. And if I believe that it's a physical problem that like related to the movement habits, and then I started to like observe the movements, and then try to like understand like what's lacking, and then give them to helpful tools, I mean exercises, but not exactly, I mean,
Mhm.
but let's say exercises, some homeworks that they need to work on. But on the other hand, sometimes it's purely psychosomatic, and it usually shows itself in 2 to 3 sessions, because unless unless our efforts, the pain just doesn't go away, or it just people keep bringing me like different pains every session. And then I understand that it's not a physical problem, but it's a psychosomatically driven problem. And then I suggest them to, like, we need to talk more about, like, because psychosomatic pain is mainly a result of unprocessed or undefined anger, guilt, and anxiety. Like that's how it's driven. So usually people cannot like understand what they're feeling, so the feeling kind of um, shows itself as muscle tension and then causes pain.
Hmm.
So
So
yeah.
when you go the psychotherapy route and you recognize it's psychosomatic, and the movement, you observing and then moving isn't really part of it,
No.
would you say that it all just gets done through like attentive conversation?
Actually, there is, with psychosomatic pain, bringing in the body is actually dangerous, because there is tendency with people who have psychosomatic problems. They have the tendency to describe their problem as physical, so they get to avoid the real problem.
Hmm.
Okay, so there is a real
That's a
danger
highlight.
there. Yeah, there's a real danger there. So I'm really, careful with psychosomatic pain, that if when they start to talk about their bodily problems, I immediately take them back to the, okay, like,
Hmm.
were you angry about something? What was going on then? Because it's a way of actually, avoiding the real problem. So
Right.
there needs to be a
Hmm.
differentiation to that.
And after this, I'm curious about this particular type of being who comes in and says, I have pain, physical pain. And you're like, whoa, you go to psycho, you recognize that it's psychosomatic, you enter into that. And then what is the cascade? How quickly does that relief come? Does it depend on the person's like willingness to let go or not let go?
You mean in terms of the pain?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there is, if they are willing to, like, work with me and, kind of accept that it's a psychosomatic problem, when we start to talk about anger, the pain immediately goes away. Immediately.
Mm.
When they say, like, the pain was coming, and I, like, I thought, what might be, what might I be angry right now, and then the pain goes away. Okay.
Hmm.
But then it's not an easy point to go, because another thing is that psychosomatic for a reason, to avoid
Mhm.
their real problem. So it's really rare that people kind of like grasp the idea that, okay, this is not a physical problem and I need to think this way. That's rare. That's really rare. They usually don't continue work with me, and they just go look help for their physical problem in other places. But if they, if they are like, oh, okay, yeah, so anger, so it's immediately
Hmm.
gone.
Interesting. So I'm gonna kind of ask one more. So you're basically, it depends on, like any coach, guide, whatever you want to call yourself, it depends on the relationship, right? You're saying they got to walk with me for a while. We got to figure this out together. Because
Yes.
again, it's not just my job to like poof and then here's your money. Like again, we've got to recognize this and keep reflecting so that we understand. If I go back to you, Sam, and your latest, do you find that you are typically used as like a trial run person? Like I think about this guy who came over and you had this session, I don't know how long it takes, but like you had this one interaction and then you're separated for at least 2 weeks instead of like, I know they live far away. So would you say that it's as well with you, Sam, it's relational, that you need to develop this time together? Or is it more, let's see what happens? There's no time prescription. The relationship is the here and now and the present, and that's all that matters.
I think if I've presented myself accurately to them and they're coming to me, that well, I mean, I guess there's some argument to be made that there's some relational thing in some abstract way, even if we've never had a conversation based off of like social media, newsletters and stuff, like knowing something about me, or they think, they think they do. And I definitely, I think this is one of the areas that I would have benefited from or will benefit in the future in some more mentorship type of apprenticeship type of capacity of like watching somebody else work with somebody for how long. But I just, at the moment, I'm comfortable with being totally present. And like, I've had people, yeah, like, I mean, sometimes it's one session. It's like, that feels like we're done together. Like this is our interaction. Sometimes it seems like it needs to go longer. And that was what was nice about this particular client as an example, was that we got towards the end of like, what was a scheduled 90-minute session. And I was just like, yeah, like we did stuff. And my body was just like, oh my God, there's more stuff to do. And I was like, I can ask him to come back. I was like, that's right. I don't have to fix everything right now. I'm going to fix everything.
Yeah.
I don't, like, all the energy doesn't need to be expressed in this moment. Like, I had one good example of that years ago, very shortly after I dove down towards the intuitive side more, where somebody came in and it was one of the first times I remembered she actually called it energy work. I didn't realize it'd be so much energy work. And I was like, what do you mean energy work? I do massage, but I was just like, I put my hands underneath of her shoulder and like couldn't move for a long fucking time. Pardon my French. And then like, finally I got whatever the signal is that I could move. And then I moved and then I was like scanning her body and went down to her feet and was like, cool, I guess I'm supposed to hold here for a while. Long story short, like, I think only about 30 minutes had passed, maybe less of what was a scheduled 90-minute session. And I kept like scanning her body in my mind's eye and was like, no, we're done. Anything else would be forced. And then I was just like, I don't know, I guess pay me $30 instead of 90. And that was like it. That was all we needed, was that grounding to, I found out that she'd been like assaulted on the street and knocked to the street, I don't know, a year or two ago, and like hit her shoulder, and like that trauma was still living in her body. And then we allowed it to move by it being seen. And so it's like, okay, cool, like that's done. And then, so I don't know, like if somebody, I think maybe you relate to this, and like, yeah, it depends on how open the person is. The more open they are, the faster stuff happens. It doesn't mean it happens right away. Like maybe there are still physiological laws that we have to abide by. But like you said, like it's also crazy. Somebody could have chronic pain for 15 years and you're like, hey, it's anger. And they're like, oh, it might be anger. And they actually feel that and it's gone. Like, it's like, that doesn't make sense, right? With the
Right. That's funny because I think,
but they might need reminders to remember that it's anger, which, and then find the next layer. Like you said too, it might not even be the anger. It's what is the anger serving? So it's like,
here's my prediction for you, Sam, is you're going to find this mentorship and you're going to like do it. And you'll be like, yeah, I was right. Like that's what it's going to come down to. You validating yourself. But sometimes, we need another experience and a tag on to do that. So
thank you.
Well, thank you guys as always. Again, it's like we do the same stuff. What do we call it? It's what does this person need? And I think everyone is big and bold enough to know when to step back and know when to, where they can enter and where they need to refer out. So great talk. Thank you as always. Have an excellent rest of your day. Zeynep, did you want to jump in?
No, just
Oh.
thank you. I mean, it was
Oh.
awesome, like as always.
This
I
was
love chatting with you guys. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Take
Thank
care.
you. Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.